want to welcome you to our July session of the Edupreneur Roundtable, where we are continuing the work to design, to disrupt, and reimagine education. So every month we come together, and this isn't quite a roundtable, so we're going to work on our logistics, but we come together at a roundtable to address the opportunities of the day in K-12 and higher education. So thank you for joining us. Today's focus is going to be goodwill and collaboration. So my question for you to ponder is, where does collaboration fit in your work? If you're on fire for preparing the next generation of leaders, where does collaboration live in your plan? My name is Neferteri Strickland. I'm the founder of Teachers and a Benefit LLC, where we believe that Pennsylvania industry deserves a world-class Pennsylvania educated workforce. And today is our first hybrid session. Some of you are online. Where are you hailing from? In the chat, if you're here in Philly, put it in there, PHL. If you're in Arkansas, put it in the chat. Jean, I know you're in the west side of the state in Pittsburgh. Well, right. Daniel, West Coast, yes. They're in Memphis, Tennessee, Forest City. I love it. I love it. That is one of the benefits that the pandemic has provided us with, is we can touch people all over the country, if not all over the world. So today's guest, Jimmy White, Jean Lofgren, and we're expecting a special guest. I don't see him on the Zoom just yet, so I'm going to hold off on telling you who he is. But I would like to introduce you, ladies, gentlemen, and roundtablers, to my partner in disruption. She's an educator. She's an edupreneur. She's a podcast host and founder of the Education Concierge, Benita Gordon. Benita, welcome.
Welcome. I'm going to start off with this. Oh, Hampton, we never can make thee a song except as our lives do the singing, in service that will that great spirit prolong and send it through centuries ringing. That is my school's alma mater song. And I am a proud graduate of a historically Black college, University, Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. We are the home of the Pirates. We rock the blue and white, but more than that, we have a first proton cancer medical center in the United States. We graduate doctors, lawyers, psychologists, psychiatrists, engineers, architect. We say to each other, what do they call you when you graduate from Hampton University? And the answer is they call us boss. That's what they call us. And I am also a legacy of HBCUs. That means my mother went to a HBCU. She went to St. Paul's College, which is now closed down. My aunts and uncles went to Virginia State. I grew up wanting to be a woo-woo cheerleader. And if you do not know what I'm speaking about, later on tonight, go to YouTube and just type in woo-woo cheerleaders of Virginia State University. I grew up wanting to be a woo-woo. And I'm a CIAA baby. That means that all of our parents would get together and take off work and would go to a basketball tournament for the entire week, to the point where school districts would start giving away and saying, you know what, we're going to make these days teacher work days, because all of the teachers would call out sick. And so I'm excited. I'm a sports junkie. So I appreciate how the NBA this year has dedicated the entire year to giving back and acknowledging HBCUs across the board. My HBCU is kind of one of the well-known ones, or maybe in the middle, but they also went all the way down to small HBCUs like Cheney, like Lincoln, like Allen University, where my cousins graduated from. And now we're talking about collaboration, where first those HBCUs, we became HBCUs because of segregation. And now we're in the stage of collaboration. And so we're excited that everyone is joining us in Venture Café Philly and across the United States. We see you guys shouting out where you are from. Let me see, Pittsburgh, still a nation, yes. I love it. Philly, San Diego. Is this say Exton? Jimmy, Exton, what?
Yeah, Exton. I'm out in suburban Philadelphia, but I work in the city.
Okay, and now I need to Google that later. And I am out here, y'all pray for me. I'm out here in Memphis, Tennessee. I go to work in Forest City, Arkansas. And today was field trip day. So y'all know I'm gonna take a nap after this. So we're gonna get started with our poll questions. And just bring everybody together to collaborate. We're gonna answer questions, answer them as truthfully and honestly as they are, because that is your truth. Give us a second to get them up. Here we go. The first one is about gender identity. All right. 63% and 38%. Thank you. Next one. And I lost my community member identity. How do you identify as a community member? I see some favors, like I'm not sure. The best one to your truth.
I guess you can't answer more than one. You pick the best one. Okay.
The best one to your truth. Yes. Great. Okay. Parents, educators, interested community members. And we do know that, of course, they always overlap. That is how it is. The next one coming up. I think we did. Entrepreneur identity. So which of the following do you identify as? Entrepreneur, intrapreneur, edupreneur, or none of the preneurs?
And Benita, could you define edupreneur and intrapreneur for anybody who doesn't know what those two mean?
So I am an edupreneur. So I'm an educator and my business is strictly in education. So I help other educators go through all of the gamut of having an educational business, whether it's from counseling to tutoring to anything that they can think of, because we have some different types of educational businesses. And hold on, because Neferteri told me about intrapreneur. Nef, I'm gonna let you jump in.
Absolutely. So entrepreneurship, you're usually still employed for someone else, but you have an entrepreneurial mindset. So your innovation inside of your organization, you're the one that is pushing for risk taking, solving problems. So you may not have established your own, but inside someone else's organization, you are pushing for innovation.
Oh, very good. Yes, wonderful. My whole career.
Yes. And so we see entrepreneurs and edupreneurs and none of the above. Thank you. And I still think all of us kind of have a little intrapreneur in us. All right. Did we have one more? Okay.
Two more.
Two more. Okay. Capital. What is the most important form of capital? I want to see the answer to this. This is going to be interesting.
A lot of thinking faces.
That's a hard one. Yeah.
Yep.
We need multiple choice.
That is interesting. Okay.
No one said political.
Wow. Did it?
Out, right? We're done with that. I think we're done with this, right?
So no one said natural and no one said political, but in the lead is social, then human, then financial. Wow. Okay. And our last poll. That's interesting. We're gonna dive into that later. Are you familiar with the B Corp business model? And my answer is yes. Thank you to the wonderful women from Black Girl Ventures. Is that Tanya in the room?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Her. I see you. I went through her. Yes, I learned more about B Corp from her, so I'm ready. I know I'm not, but I know. Not ready. Okay, good. Yes, I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating and honoring your truth. I'm gonna turn it back over to Neferteri.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that B Corp model. Specifically the Benefit LLC, Jean Loughran is with us, and we'll talk to her just a little bit later. That special guest that I told you that may or may not pop in, Brian Walker has popped in. I want to introduce him to this roundtable. From A to Z, the ABCs of HBCUs. Benita, she shared with you that she is a graduate of an HBCU. My undergraduate is from Santa Ana State University as well, so I'm an HBCU attendee. And so he gives readers a front row, an all-inclusive tour of historically Black colleges and universities. So it's first a children's book, introducing young readers to college campuses like Howard University, Spelman College, Lincoln, Meharry Medical College. So Brian, welcome to the roundtable.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join you. I'm actually remote today. I'm celebrating my wedding anniversary of my beautiful wife. So we're in a hotel in not Pismo Beach. Where are we at? What city? Santa Barbara, California. So it's beautiful outside. And so I was trying to get we had a little bit, I think the hotel internet wasn't cooperating. So I had to switch to my Wi-Fi. That's why I was a moment late, but thank you for the opportunity to join you. Just to tell you quickly who we are, I'm one half of HBCU Prep School, which is a company that me and my wife started together, which is a self-publishing company that we created. We started off by publishing her first book, which is the ABCs, the HBCUs, which is just like she said, all about historically Black colleges, Battle of the Bands, all the Divine Nine is represented in there. We cover all the Black Greek fraternities and sororities. I see Benita moving her hands. There we go. And so we have a lot of fun there. Our biggest goal is to create, we have 3 children. We wanted to create media that our children could see themselves in, see images of themselves, because it's not out there. There's not enough where you could open a book and say, oh, I'm in there. And, obviously there's a whole nother discussion about getting us into other areas of history and subject, art in those areas, the contributions of African-Americans throughout the past. But it's been an exciting journey for us. And I'm more than anything, we're excited to join you. Really quickly, I'll tell you our next book coming out. We're hoping for by the end of the year will be the ABCs of Black Wall Street, which is going to highlight the huge accomplishments that happens throughout Black Wall Street. We're going to focus on the good things about it, and use it as a motivational tool.
Amazing, Brian. Thank you so much. So I've been trying to purchase 5 books from our edupreneurs to push out to educators, and I'd like to do that with ABCs and HBCUs as well. We look forward to the Black Wall Street book as well. Do you all have any questions for Brian, either here in the room or in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic, to say that correctly, and ask a question, please, it's an opportunity to do so.
I'll ask. So what age group are your books targeted towards? And what was your biggest surprise? So 2 questions, like what was your biggest aha learning moment when you were researching the books?
So the first one is the goal initially was for K through, we were thinking 5th grade, 4th and 5th grade. We were wrong. And a lot of it is based on the need. We have high schools buying the book because there aren't books like that out there. We are working on a high school version, by the way. And so what I left out was, I didn't want to make it be a whole commercial, but we're doing a middle school and elementary activity book to go along with it. And we're doing a coloring book, elementary age coloring book. But the reason why that I want to point that out though is, one, there's a lack of materials, but it's written in I don't want to use the term because I forgot it, but it's a complex level of poetry my wife used. So it goes through ABC. So the immediate thought is, oh, it's ABCs. Yeah, but if you look at the way it is, we use it. It's an advanced level of poetry. So 4 stanzas on each letter, and it gives not just names of schools, but it gives vital information. For example, the letter J talks about that 80% of Black judges come out of HBCUs. I know I didn't know that. And to jump right into your second question, the aha moment, there's many in there. That's one of the big ones. For me personally, I didn't go to an HBCU. My wife went to Spelman. She's an alum of Spelman. And I have my own HBCU story, which is I had an opportunity to go to one. I went to San Jose State, great school, enjoyed it, wonderful education time. But my high school counselor told me, oh, you're really smart. You shouldn't be considering a school like an HBCU. And talk down on it. I'm not from a city that had a large amount of Black people, so they looked at it differently, and so we're trying to bridge that gap. And I'm just going to assume that counselor didn't mean it maliciously. Maybe he didn't know the great things that come out of HBCUs. We look at people like Oprah, great entrepreneurs, we look at, you know, I didn't even know the biggest aha moment for me to answer the question is, I didn't even have an idea there was an HBCU in California. That was huge to me, you know, so learning those type of things and go, wait, what? I had no idea. So me and my wife have sat down and, you know, we really went through, how do we get this information out to people? How do we make sure that parents understand it and know it, that this continues to be a great opportunity? It's not like it is now. I know it's very popular now because of our vice president, which is excellent. But I also think it's very important for us to understand that HBCUs have been around for a long time. You know, Martin Luther King with the Morehouse. There's so many great stories of achievements throughout the historically Black colleges and universities.
Thank you.
So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So Brian, you mentioned Martin Luther King. And so that segues right into our next guest, Jimmy White. Welcome to the roundtable. So Jimmy White IV is a South Philadelphia native and an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran who's passionate about seeking and empowering youth and veterans locally and nationally. He is a board member for the Social Media PHL Conference, the Community Partnership School, and is a scholar for the George W. Bush Center Stand To program. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to have you do all my introductions.
She's got the voice of a goddess.
So Jimmy, some people here, as well as virtually, know that I curate talks with TEDx, which you've spoken for one of our TEDx Intrepid Ed studios, locally organized, and you spoke about how you're connected through your school with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which Brian so greatly brought up, so I can segue. Tell us your story for those that have not seen your TEDx talk. Tell us your story and why you're on fire for education.
I thank you so much. It's interesting. So as a South Philadelphia native, I went to definitely the worst middle school in the city of Philadelphia, Barrett Junior High School. And I had such a traumatic experience there that I actually almost ran away from home. Luckily for me, I played music, and my mom found me on Broad Street begging for McDonald's. That's how she got me back from running away at the age of 10. But then, I got into a music school, Gerard Academic Music Program in South Philadelphia, amazing program. They nurtured me, gave me wraparound service, and really supported me to excel in high school and in middle school, and then into the rest of my life. Well, fast forward through my military career, I come back to South Philadelphia to give a presentation, and they said, "Hey, Jimmy, where do you want to give a presentation about character and leadership?" I said, "Send me back to Barrett Middle School. I'm going back to that school because I'm the speaker that I wish I had when I was in middle school." And while I was doing the research, I found out that Dr. Martin Luther King in 1967 gave one of his most famous speeches at that school, "What's in Your Life's Blueprint?" the famous street sweeper speech. At that school, I went to that school for an entire year. There was no plaque, there was no signs, there was no assignment, there was no assembly. There was nothing telling me that Dr. Martin Luther King came to South Philadelphia and told little brown boys and little brown girls that looked just like me that they needed to have a life blueprint. So every year now, I go back to that school and I make sure every young person, every class knows that they too need to have a blueprint. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have the TEDx platform with your studio to be able to spread that message globally. So it's been a super, super honor.
Awesome. Well, I just put in the chat for later viewing for anyone that wants to hear your whole TEDx talk on the stage in Barrett Middle School, they can do so. So today we're focusing on collaboration, we're focusing on goodwill. What type of collaborative opportunities do you see here in Philadelphia in education?
Interesting. Philadelphia, we are the city of neighborhoods. We are the city of community. You know, it was back in the day, I could walk down the street and if I said a curse word, 5 minutes later, my mom knew about it, said, "Sister Sally said such and such, you said such and such, come on home and let's talk about this." But we kind of lost that sense of this connected, shared community. So now to be able to have organizations partners with schools. So myself personally, this past fall, I did a community building project with my alma mater, Gerard Academic Music Program. They said, "Jimmy, how do you build a virtual environment and this sense of community in that virtual environment. I said, well, we got to start with this tribal identity and build this out on why everybody is important to it. And it was an amazing program. And we actually did surveys. So we did surveys at the beginning of each class and then at the end of the week. And we found out that we had these outliers that didn't feel connected to a community, and we were able to target them, bring them into the fold, and we would see those statistics where everyone felt like they were more connected. So here we are using stuff that I personally use in corporate America. I use customer satisfaction surveys. I use structured agenda and formats. I use analytical decision-making processes, now applying that into the school system that we have now so that we can have a better environment for our young people. So it's really about this shared community where we can begin to grab nuggets from here and nuggets from there to get the best experience possible that we can for our young people.
So if you have one project that we could support, what would that be?
The one project that I would really love everyone to support would be a program that's called Character Does Matter. It's presented by the Travis Mannion Foundation, and I've been part of that program since 2017. And here's the really cool part about this. The Travis Mannion Foundation takes veterans like me and Gold Star family members, that's families of fallen heroes. And they tell us to go into our communities, and build character and leadership in the next generation of leaders, which is our children, our students. And I've been able to do this nationally, where we talk about character and leadership, and this is why I love, we talk about putting your character into action. So often we want to talk about English, we want to talk about science, we want to talk about all these other stuff, but these soft skills that a lot of our young people don't have, they need those. They need to understand teamwork. They need to understand what true leadership looks like. Here's one. You need to know what appreciation of beauty looks like. Think about it. A big, 6'3", 200-pound guy like me walking into a school and saying, hey, let me tell you about how I went on this journey to begin to learn how to appreciate nature, appreciate art, appreciate the things that look different to me. And then I can explain to them this sentiment is that, look, when you appreciate something different in somebody else, you're now showing them true love and appreciation. It's easy for us to appreciate something that looks like us, but true beauty, true love is when you can appreciate others and the diversity that we have in this world. And I tell them that's our true superpower that we have, to celebrate our diversity and celebrate our differences. So Character Does Matter. You can look it up on the Travis Mannion Foundation website. And if you can also YouTube it, you'll see a couple of presentations and stuff that I've done through the Character Does Matter program.
Character does matter. We'll look it up. How we can support. Obviously, you're always welcome back here to share. So if there are any questions for Jimmy, please drop that in the chat. Benita.
Hey, okay.
Benita, you muted.
Were you going to ask me a question, or are you ready for me to keep going?
Well, I want to bring Jean in the conversation because she's going to talk about that triple bottom line. And everything Jimmy said was amazing. As education-focused entrepreneurs go, there is the business model that we have to think about with the goodwill and the collaboration. And I believe she's in a good position to speak to that. So what are your thoughts? What are your questions, Benita, around that benefit model, that triple bottom line model that we go, as we go into this, that Jean can speak to?
Nev, repeat your question one more time for me.
What are your thoughts or questions around the triple bottom line benefit organization that Jean can ensure that she speaks to as she shares with us her model, BNDs?
So I think for me, it's always just making sure exposure and collaboration. How do those work? And then the accountability part. So once we've done all of those things and we've gotten it together, making sure what's the exposure like? how is the what does the collaboration look like? Because the collaboration always looks different depending on what you're working on and who you're working with. And then how is the accountability piece involved so that everyone involved is held accountable so that we can keep moving forward. Those are my three. It's not too much.
Well, I know that I want to give her a proper introduction
Yeah.
because Jean has been so great. Jean Goffrin is the principal and manager of B Entities LLC and a business lawyer for Stone Cipher Law Firm. She received her undergraduate in political science from the Pennsylvania State University, we are, and her JD from Pitt Law. Then she went on to found B Entities. So Jean, welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Benita wanted to know, how do we hold people accountable? What does the business model look like? Why should we be involved? And how can we ensure everyone has skin in the game?
So I'll start with a high level distinction. So certified B Corps or a certification, that's different than a benefit LLC, which is a state entity setup, like an actual legal entity type. And then B entities is kind of a term I coined to cover anybody who's integrating the B impact assessment into their operations, regardless of whether they are going to follow a benefit LLC model or become a certified B Corp. And so what the differences are is that each of those three entities have to go through some sort of assessment. And what I focus on is the B impact assessment, which is the assessment you have to do as a certified B Corp. And it's an assessment that would satisfy the obligations for a benefit company. And then I tend to take the approach with the B impact assessment. I take a qualitative approach. The way that it's structured, it looks at governance practices, it looks at employee engagement, it looks at community partnership, and it looks at kind of your supply chain and environmental stewardship. And it asks a host of multiple choice questions in each of those areas. And it provides you a list of anywhere from 5 to 10 different business practices for each question, all of which constitute a kind of positive business practice that can have varying points of value that the entity that runs the assessment assigns to that particular practice. So with my company, B Entities, I help business owners go through the assessment so they kind of understand and not spin their wheels with the questions and things, and they can kind of have somebody who's familiar with it, give them ideas and things like that. But we go through it without regard to the point value for a particular practice. We just look at what's the natural next right fit for an organization, to start implementing. But the way it's set up, I mean, it's really a roadmap that entrepreneurs can pick and choose what makes sense to them and implement in their own time to engage all of these different stakeholders that have an interest in how a company is run. And so it really, I guess the disruption sort of is to move from this shareholder wealth maximization business model where you're just focused on profit, and then you engage all these other entities into the conversation. And so you become a more of a multi-stakeholder approach business model. And some of the things that Jimmy was saying that you do with your company, you're spot on with the B impact assessment practices in terms of surveying satisfaction, really, having a conversation with the different stakeholders so that you understand what's going on and you can adjust and have a positive impact.
So I'm glad you started there, because the question in the chat is, how do edupreneurs morally balance profit versus impact, which is the ongoing question of the century, decade, and year. And so I'm not sure if you do have an answer that I know has always come up in business. Edupreneurs, because our heart is in education and service, at times it is difficult for us to put a price tag and or charge our worth in our business, but we do have to eat. So how would you normally answer that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So one of the first questions you'll get from the assessment, it starts with the governance practice, and it asks you to rate, how do these other non-monetary considerations impact your business decision? Do you give any consideration to it? Do you give some consideration to it? Do you balance it equally with your profitability, or do you put it above your profitability? So you're willing to sacrifice profitability in order to advance a particular social or environmental mission. And there's no point assessments attached to any of that, so I think it's an individual's choice, what speaks to you, what's your conscience, and there's no way for anybody else to answer that question for you. I will note that the B Corp certification and the benefit company business model is one of the only bipartisan things that I'm aware of that gets passed on a regular basis. Republicans are on board because an entrepreneur's decision to have a multi-stakeholder approach to their business is something that's not dictated by the government. And then Democrats, for the most part, they're on board because you're taking an approach that is all encompassing, and it's looking at the needs of everybody in the organization. So it's it has a lot of potential, and I think it's picking up more traction. And more people are becoming aware of it, and including consumers too. One of the surveys I cite on my website is that in 2007, when the business model started, Goldman Sachs did a study, and for the very first time, they found that the primary driver for consumer brand loyalty was not price, it was corporate social responsibility. And that's just been increasing over time. And those responses that put corporate social responsibility above price were particularly true for millennials and for women. And there's a projected 30 plus trillion wealth transfer that's supposed to happen over the next few decades from the baby boomer generations to millennials. And so for me, that signals that this trend will just continue to go upward, and that there's going to be more people educated on, how your business is done, how you're treating people that are engaged in your business, and the environment as well.
That is amazing that you say that. I am a middle school teacher, and I learned this year from my middle schoolers that they do pay attention to products and companies. What do they do? What are they saying? And they are following them on social media, which I didn't even know. So they're following these companies on social media. They were watching what they were tweeting or not saying. And I know we have the thing with cancel culture, but for younger children, that's not what it is. It's about, did you say something? What did you say? Do I want my parents to spend money with you, or can we find somebody else? And that's one of the things that, like, I didn't know. So when we had a conversation about it, they were like, yeah, because you need to buy Toms.
Yeah.
I'm not, what do you start from the beginning? And so they were telling me that they are paying attention. How are you treating the earth? Do they have labor camps? Are other kids in other countries their ages not going to school, and they're working to create the product that we're buying? It's so expensive in America. I just was baffled that it was even on their radar. I know certain stuff is on their radar. So when you said that, immediately made me think that is so true. And I did not think about the process of the transfer of wealth from my dad's generation to us, to our children, nieces and nephews. That is happening now quicker than before.
Yeah, there's far more transparency now in supply chains just because of the internet and people having smartphones and access and the capacity to find out. And so one of the things, like a hallmark legal requirement for benefit companies and for certified B Corps, is that they're supposed to publish their assessment scores. You don't have to, unless you're a wholly owned subsidiary of a public company, you don't have to publish your entire detailed assessment answers. You can just, publish generically what your scores are by each category, and that satisfies the requirement. But that's something that's nice about the benefit company model and the certified B Corp, is that you can see, one, they've done the assessment, and two, they're showing you, not just a single snapshot of a particular aspect of their business, but they're giving you the full gamut of what they're doing.
And do we have any questions on the floor? I have one more.
I was just gonna add one comment, Benita, if it's okay. I was just gonna say another angle of that too, when we're talking about, wagering profit versus decision making. One thing that we struggled with on our, I wouldn't even say struggled with, it was actually an easy decision. We had three larger publishing companies immediately come out and say, "Oh, we like what you're doing," and they used the term partner with you. But once you read the fine print, it was take it over and control it. And what happens a lot of times is, because of financial means, you give up your control, and then you find out that, oh, wait, I didn't intend for it to be delivered that way, or I didn't intend for it to be changed that way, or I didn't intend to put my money in that, that area, because people, I hate to use the term, but sold out, signed on to it too. So it was something that we had to take a little bit of a risk to say, no, we do have a little bit more control because we're both working full time and we're able to make that decision. But some people aren't in that decision, man. So it is tough what larger companies sometimes can do quickly to just grab a hold of you and say, look, this is the way it is. This is the only way you can. So it was something that we've had to push back on.
And I do want to iterate that there are people here, the Edupreneurs Roundtable, who are entrepreneurs, edupreneurs, businessmen and women. So anytime anyone wants to reach out for counsel, for suggestions, hey, this is coming up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And if we can't help you, we have plenty of resources and other people we can connect you with, so that you don't feel, what I heard this week was, so that you don't feel you're thirsty, but you're not parched.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. So Brian, I'm gonna bring you in and for your comment on the question.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Mm.
Word. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Carter, aka B-Rock Carter. So the comment that I had on the question of profit versus impact, the first thing that came to mind was video games and the allocation of resources, right? Where we are looking at the quality of the player and the way in which they move and how they maintain their dignity and their value in the act of them doing their things, versus you have someone that wants to get cheap wins. So when I'm looking at this profit versus impact, I think it more so, when I'm seeing it, it has to do with why, right? Why the person is taking a stance, why the person is doing that particular work in this particular way. So for example, if you talk about investigative journalism takes a hit because of the advertisers that potentially come on board with that media entity. And what happens is, like brother Brian Walker said, is that the advertisers collectively can hijack that media entity into not looking at certain types of media, or not doing certain types of investigative journalism. So even for myself, do I want to take on board advertisers or whatnot? Do I want to look at certain media, certain journalism topics, and what is the impact, not just financially, but on a social component for my business? So, but to keep it short, that's the way that I interpreted the question in my example.
So Brian, you're in Philadelphia. I know that. I know you're in Philly. So what you want to do in the space with video gaming, you're in the perfect market to do so with the Fusion Center and all of the infrastructure that's about to be erected. And so we went into this session with a question, where does collaboration live in your plan? So I'm going to ask you to kick that off with your desire and education-focused entrepreneurship. Where does collaboration play a role?
Oh man. Okay, so where does collaboration play a role in education? That's the question, correct?
Yes.
All right. So one of my favorite analogies is Foreman Voltron, right? And also the Power Rangers. If for those of you all that have watched the Power Rangers, you all know that each Power Ranger has had their own episode. So it's a specific episode where that Power Ranger shines, and their skills and their assets are the reason why they win this particular day. On any other given episode, all the Power Rangers are collectively playing a part in achieving the W. So when I think about partnerships and I think about education, I think about what I want to do. My focus is on skill acquisition. when I forecast the type of careers that are going to be available in the future, I look at what we're doing now and I'm horrified, right? But I'm excited because of the type of resources and skills that we have. So Neferteri, as I've spoken with you individually, Jimmy, it's some conversation I've had with you as well. When I talk about video games, I look at the skill acquisition that comes from being involved in that type of space, right? So I have a program that I've been developing called the Academic Gamer, where we take the learned skills in video games and apply them to these education and academic spaces. So I'm looking at video gaming designing companies. I'm looking at hospitals and the video game technology and programs that they're using in these entities that can then be used as projects in these colleges, elementary schools, high schools. I see where things need to go. I see the enhancement that needs to happen. I see that everybody needs their own episode as we all work together. And for me, the partnerships deal with using the resources that we have here to build and utilize real life projects that in turn can show the students what Philadelphia can do with what they have right here.
Everyone gets their own episode. I love that. I love that.
Episode.
Go ahead, Benita.
I would like my own episode. Thank you.
You look like the Blue Ranger. You look like the Blue Ranger.
Let me go back. I am old, so Power Rangers was not my group. I am from the old school Transformers.
That's prime.
And what's the He-Man? Like that's me. Okay. Right.
And She-Ra.
Okay. Wonder Woman, like the real Wonder Woman, not the cartoon, like so that's how old I am. But for me, collaboration, and especially the women from Black Girl Ventures, y'all know, collaboration is like huge to me. Like the entity of us coming together to help each other. That it is, I need to pay for your services, or we do a trade and switch off. That is how we're going to progress and grow. And I wrote it down, tribal identity. Who said that? Brian, or it might've been Jimmy, that he told us he had to jump off. But that's what I love, that tribal identity. It doesn't matter which tribe you came from. We all understood how we did the trade system. And so that's something I do believe in a community where collaboration comes in. And for education, that's what it is. There are some times where I need somebody to help me with social media to move my education business, but you also need me to help move your child into college. So how can we collaborate and get this done? And I think as an edupreneur, we always have to look at collaboration and how can we move the children and the business from one aspect to the other. And my sister and I were just talking about that, us being from a small town. It was a collaboration of our parents getting us on the buses, taking us to the college tours. That was a collaboration of the sororities and fraternities, the communities, the churches saying, we're going to take the kids out of the country. We're going to take them to UVA, Virginia State, VCU, North Carolina A&T, UNC, so that we can see all of the colleges, so we can understand that it's okay for us to leave home. It's also okay for us to come back. And so that to me is what collaboration is.
Beautiful. So, yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Glenn Hyman, and I didn't catch the first 45 minutes, so I hope I'm not off target here, but I'd like to use, especially since we're in an eds and meds community here, kind of what's going on in the healthcare community and accountable care organizations, which I think are broke, okay? But the whole concept is not broke, all right? Accountable care organizations are all about collaboration. Having your primary care physician, making sure that they communicate with your cardiologist, your pulmonologist, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, I think it's a broke system because I don't think it works well, but conceptually, I think it's excellent. And I think if we could do that on the ed side as well as the med side, that's perfect. I happen to have a daughter-in-law who's a guidance counselor. Okay, the guidance counselor's job at the elementary school level, that didn't exist in my day. A guidance counselor, elementary school, middle school, didn't exist. All right, but it does today. And of course, you have different levels of need depending upon the school district. Certainly here in the Philadelphia metro area. But what does a guidance counselor really need to do? Obviously address the needs of the student, most importantly, but that guidance counselor needs to coordinate that with all the teachers that are involved. And then the elementary school is no longer just one teacher, as it was pretty much in my day, again, all right? And of course, the parents have to buy in. And that's sometimes the most difficult thing. But when it comes to, what's the most influential period of a student's life, preschool through elementary school, if you haven't captured a kid's attention at the end of elementary school, you've probably lost them. So from an education standpoint, and this is just a dad speaking, okay, I have two very successful adult children, and they pretty much did it on their own, but we gave them the environment to thrive. Kind of at a high school level where there were the haves and the have-nots, and there's actually a road that kind of divides that, unfortunately. But they were privileged to be in the honors program and took full advantage of that. But that wasn't without an awful lot of, I'll say, support, not only from parents, but guidance counselors. I wouldn't say the guidance counselors did a really good job when it came to colleges. The college that my daughter ended up at wasn't even on the guidance counselor's radar screen. Okay, my daughter ended up going to Colgate University. So, so if you're looking at collaboration, there's an awful lot of parties that need to collaborate, whether it be eds or meds or the business world in general. So for whatever that's worth, I hope I was on point. I might not have been, maybe I digressed a little bit, but I just wanted to share that from my own personal experiences.
Fabulous, Glenn. And I appreciate you joining us here at the roundtable. Every month we come together, it's education-focused entrepreneurs. And what you're saying does transcend different domains, different industries. And at the heart of education is community, right? At the heart of education is community. So we invite everyone back next month. We're actually going to be here all afternoon. It's the EdTech Takeover. So we invite you virtually or in person, 3675 Market Street, or via Zoom. Are there a closing thought? Is there a closing thought, Benita, as we round out?
Yes, so my closing thought is this, and I put it in the chat. Exposure, environment, collaboration of all involved. We are the village, period. Whether you went to a HBCU or you wanted to go, just everybody wants to go. Whether you went to what we say PWI, community college, whether you were a school of hard knocks, whether you have street cred or you do not, it is the exposure, the environment, and the collaboration of all parties involved. And that is how we move the needle. That is how we ensure our students and our scholars are ready. And that is how we ensure that our communities are where we want them to be.
So thank you once again for joining us at the Edupreneur Roundtable, where we design to disrupt and reimagine education. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all for joining us.